This is going to sound pretty wild, but what if I told you that two countries that are now arch enemies were once the best of friends? I mean, their leaders were meeting in secret, sharing intelligence, and even kicking off a nuclear program together. This is the incredible secret history of the friendship between Iran and Israel and how it all went so terribly wrong. So let's just state it plainly. The relationship between Iran and Israel is one of the most stunning 180s in modern history. We're talking about a shift from being secret, strategic allies to sworn, bitter enemies. Understanding how we got from then to now is a story you just have to hear. So that leads us to the big question we're tackling in this explainer. How on earth did this happen? How does a deep friendship, one that was built over decades, not just fall apart, but turn into the dangerous shadow war we see today? Well, to get the answer, we have to jump in our time machine and go back to a very, very different Middle East. All right, so our story really starts right after World War I. The old Ottoman Empire collapses, the map of the Middle East gets completely redrawn, and a new political movement rises up. One that, ironically, is the very thing that's going to push Iran and Israel together. And this new movement was called Arab nationalism. The idea was that all these newly independent Arab nations should unite into one massive, powerful bloc. Now, if you're one of the two major non-Arab powers in the region, that sounds a little threatening, right? And that's exactly how Iran, which is Persian, and the brand new state of Israel felt. They were the outsiders, and they suddenly felt very isolated. So Israel is in a really tough spot, surrounded by nations that are not exactly friendly. They desperately needed allies. So their very first prime minister, David Ben-Gurion, comes up with this brilliant strategy he calls the periphery doctrine. The logic was simple. If you can't be friends with your immediate neighbors, just leapfrog them and make friends with their neighbors. And who is the biggest, most important non-Arab country on that periphery? You guessed it, Iran. And you know what? The plan worked. Almost immediately. In 1950, Iran gives Israel what's called de facto recognition. It wasn't some big, flashy announcement. It was more of an open secret, a wink and a nod. They even let Israel set up a diplomatic mission in Tehran. Now, to keep it on the down low, it didn't have a flag and was officially called a trade office. But come on, we all know it was an embassy. The friendship was officially on. Okay, now we're at the golden era, pillars of a friendship. What came next was, truly, a golden age of cooperation. For nearly 30 years, this bond between Iran and Israel just got stronger and stronger, built on four really important pillars that helped both countries out immensely. And their partnership was the real deal. It covered everything you could think of: intelligence sharing, military hardware, major economic deals, and cutting-edge tech. This was not some casual friendship. This was a true strategic alliance in every sense of the word. Just look at the security ties. They went deep. The leader of Iran, the Shah, was paranoid about internal threats, so he created a secret police force called Savak. And who did he call to train them? Israel's legendary Mossad. They taught Savak all the tricks of surveillance and interrogation. In return, Israel sold Iran advanced weapons and even had Iranian fighter pilots training in Israel. But maybe the biggest issue they tackled together was economic. It was a classic case of supply and demand. Israel was desperate for oil, and Iran had tons of it. The problem? The main shipping route, the Suez Canal, was controlled by Egypt, a major enemy of Israel. There was just no way Egypt was going to let Iranian oil tankers pass through to help Israel. So what did they do? They came up with this absolutely ingenious secret solution, a pipeline. It was a 50-50 joint venture built right across Israel. So Iranian tankers would unload oil at the southern port of Eilat, the oil would get piped all the way to Ashkelon on the Mediterranean, and from there it could be sold to Europe. They completely bypassed their shared enemy. It was a geopolitical masterstroke. Okay, but this might be the most jaw-dropping piece of irony in this entire story. The United States, as part of its Atoms for Peace program, helped Iran get its first nuclear research reactor back in 1967. But Iran needed scientists who knew how to run the thing. So who did the US and Iran turn to for help training that first generation of nuclear scientists? That's right, Israel. Just let that sink in for a moment. And this wasn't just some cold, calculated alliance. It was personal. Leaders like David Ben-Gurion and the Shah met up all the time, but always in total secret. I mean, there's this amazing anecdote about Ben-Gurion flying into Tehran wearing a wig just to avoid being spotted by the media. That tells you everything, doesn't it? This was a friendship they were deeply invested in. So for decades, it seemed like this alliance of outsiders was absolutely unbreakable. But then, in 1979, a single event didn't just crack the foundation of this friendship, it shattered it completely. And that event was the Iranian Revolution. And things changed with breathtaking speed. I mean, in January of 79, the Shah, Israel's great friend, is forced to flee the country. Just a few weeks later, the revolutionary leader Ayatollah Khomeini returns from exile. And almost immediately, that Israeli mission in Tehran, that symbol of their 3-decade friendship, was stormed and taken over. And then, in the most dramatic gesture imaginable, Khomeini's new government handed the keys to the former Israeli mission over to Yasser Arafat, the leader of the Palestine Liberation Organization, Israel's #1 enemy. Arafat was welcomed in Tehran like a hero. The message to Israel and the world was brutally clear. The alliance was dead. So the story of the friendship was over, but the story of Iran and Israel was not. In a final, strange twist, their shared history would lead to one last, paradoxical moment of cooperation before their relationship was buried for good, replaced by the shadow war we see today. You see, the revolution brought a seismic ideological shift. Ayatollah Khomeini fundamentally redefined Iran's foreign policy. Israel was no longer a strategic partner. It was now framed as the enemy of Islam. The entire basis of their friendship was suddenly declared an act of treason. But then came the ultimate paradox. A year after the revolution, Iran was invaded by its neighbor, Iraq. Suddenly, Khomeini's new regime desperately needed weapons. And who stepped in to secretly supply them? Israel. I know, it's wild, but that old strategic logic, the enemy of my enemy is my friend, briefly reemerged. Israel wanted to see its powerful Arab neighbor, Iraq, weakened, so they helped Iran. Well, that secret cooperation didn't last. After the long war with Iraq ended, Iran restarted its nuclear program, the very program Israel had helped establish decades earlier. But now, it was in the hands of a revolutionary regime that called Israel an enemy. For Israel, this changed everything. Iran went from being a potential threat to an existential one. And that's when the shadow war really began. So we end up right back where we started. A friendship built on strategy, a rivalry born from ideology. If this history teaches us anything, it's that in geopolitics, nothing is permanent. Alliances can shift in the blink of an eye, which leaves us with one final, lingering question. Could the story ever change again?